want to touch on some of the players now. We mentioned them in passing along the way, just sort of how impressive they've been in sort of their season and maybe even sort of where the future lies. One of whom I want to begin with is Kate Gordon, actually, because seemingly the next big thing for a while, obviously a lengthy layoff of injury, almost a year, I think it was, all told. Took him a while, it felt like, to get back up and running this season in the academy, but another one was just on Kieran Morrison before, another one who ended the season in superb form, and actually the game that got Liverpool to that Tottenham game for the 21s, he was spectacular in the second half, so feels like he's come good again, just at the right time. I mean, he won't think like that, he might have wanted the season to go on, but he can go away now pre-season and go again a little bit.
A brilliant story, really. I think it was September or October he came back, and he'd been out for about 19 or 20 months. So it was almost, almost 2 years that he'd been out.
I didn't realise that's a long time.
It was probably an emotional moment, I think, for him to come back after such a long time. They'd been really careful with him. He's had a couple of little things before that, but I think at the back end of the season, he's managed to put together 10 or 12 games where he's played pretty much 90 minutes in all of them, which says to me that, yes, he'd probably quite like the season not to have finished right now, but also I think he's clearly physically back ready. He's been scoring goals. He's been captaining that team as well, which I think is interesting. He's still, pretty young. He's still a teenager because of how young Liverpool brought him in. It kind of feels like he's about 25 by now, but he isn't. He's still on the verge of taking that next step and being able to potentially maybe go out on loan next season. It will be interesting. I think there's a bit of a decision. The fact that Liverpool have changed manager, I think maybe there might be a few less loans. I think a few players might be keen to stick around and show Arne Slot what they can do, particularly during pre-season. But even once the season starts, I think there'll be, maybe one or two that might have thought about it, might just sit on the side of maybe it's better to be, in first team training every week with him rather than being somewhere else. And not that they'd get forgotten, but it's easier to make a good impression, I think, if you're there and you're in front of the new manager rather than, being somewhere else. So I think that'll be interesting. I think there's a big decision really to be made with him. Clearly, he's too good to play for the under-21s. The question is, how many minutes would he get for the senior team next season? I think there is a case that he could get enough. We've seen, he can clearly play at senior level. He could come in for the FA Cup games. He could come in for the League Cup games as well. It's just a case of, is that enough for him? Would it be on balance better for him to go to, I don't know, the top end of the Championship, say, and play every single week? Or would it be better to have, half an hour off the bench here and there, maybe for Liverpool in certain matches? It will be interesting. Obviously, the Champions League is a little bit different next season, so there'll be a couple more games for Liverpool. There will be, more opportunities at senior level. From what we know of Arne Slot, he does love a winger as well, which I think will be interesting. So there's definitely, I think, an opportunity for Kate Gordon to kick on. The question really is, does he kick on at Liverpool or is it somewhere else that he goes on loan? But absolutely one to keep an eye on for next season. He's been one of the highest performers, I think, for Liverpool. He's one of the youngsters with the highest ceiling. And, if you think about how he was viewed 2 years ago, I wouldn't be thinking too differently, even though you've probably not heard about him a huge amount in that time. I still think he's the same player. He's successfully come back from injury and not look like he's any slower or any physically worse off. He's come back and he just looks exactly the same player.
No, I tend to agree with you. And as I say, certainly as the back end of the season approach, you just look like a level above, really. And that's no disrespect to people in and around him. He was just outstanding. And he is that talented. It shouldn't come as a huge shock. And as you say, I don't think there really is a wrong answer when it comes to what happens to him next season. I think the new manager stuff is also a really interesting point, and that's going to be fascinating to watch. And also the fact Liverpool now back in the Champions League gives the 21s more sort of higher level European football as well, which could come in handy for some of these lads if they do stick around. Bobby Clark next, we've alluded to him a couple of times. I mean, I've almost loathed to put him in the academy conversation because it feels like he is beyond that now ever so slightly. I mean, he's obviously dropped into the 21s at times this season. He's captained that side as well every now and then. Ended the season actually injured, which was unfortunate, of course. But I don't know, it feels to me like he's sort of heading more towards the first team setup as opposed to the academy one.
Yeah, absolutely. He was really, really unlucky, I think, with a couple of injuries. ended the season injured, but he had an injury at the start as well, and I think he would have played at least a couple more of the Europa League group games had he not been injured at that time. So I think he is definitely one that you'd put into the senior picture. Probably similar to Cade Gordon, where I wonder if there might be a loan that might be worthwhile. Again, it would probably be the top end of the Championship. I'm sure there'd be plenty of interest in him if that was to be the case and he was to be made available. It might just have to be a similar decision to Gordon, really, in terms of would you rather play every week there or would you rather be with the new manager and try and force your way in? I think there will be minutes for him, but obviously there is a lot of competition in that Liverpool midfield. We don't know what they're going to do in terms of the transfers, but you'd imagine one or two of those players will step up. I think Curtis Jones probably would imagine he could get more minutes. Harvey Elliott will want more minutes. Ryan Gravenberch will want more minutes. There is a bit of a question mark if you're Bobby Clark of, well, is it going to be them or is it going to be me that's going to do that? I'm sure he'd back himself. He's talented enough. He's got a really high ceiling. I think he's up there with Cade Gordon, really. The two of those, I think, are the two that I would look at in terms of next season, in terms of being able to break in and stay in. But I think, again, there is a bit of a question over him. I think the question of physically, is he ready to play senior football, has been answered. He's been brilliant for Liverpool whenever he's played. He's not looked out of place. There was a game for the 21s probably about a month or so ago now where they played Sunderland and he was clearly targeted. Obviously, the talent is part of that. The Newcastle connection as well is probably part of it as well. But he got a good few kicks in that game and managed to get through it and carry on. I think he's ready to go and play every week in the Championship if he wants to do that. I have no doubt that there would be a queue of clubs ready for him to go there and play a part. But yeah, there's an interesting question for him. I think definitely at the start of pre-season he'll probably go in and be able to make a good impression. It probably helps with him that the Euros and the Copa America are this summer. He'll be one that's in there, assuming he's over his current injury. He'll be one of those that's in from day one with the new manager and the new coaching staff. That probably helps in terms of putting himself on the map for next season. But yeah, absolutely one to watch. I'd be surprised in the next 5 years if he didn't make it at Liverpool. I think he's got that talent and the ability to do that.